I tell you, time and chances actually comes your way, and so that's why when I'm mentoring those that are junior to me, I tell them run towards where you have challenges. So the way I moved from operations to planning, which is at the head office, was quite interesting. So I was leading the 5S program, which is the 5S program that's using an operation unit to help them in making and optimizing your units and your factory. Um, we I was leading the program for the a particular plant, and in my factory, I'd created this program and printed it out, put it in like a storyboard. And so I remember one of the head of HR then was brought in as an expert transformational leader to actually so he was going through my factory and he bumped into my office. He never knew where my office was because all I used to do in those years was to go to the head office to meet with him if he had one-on-one discussion. So he came to my factory that particular day and he was just walking around. And so he saw the storyboard and the end-to-end plan. And that was it. He walked into my office and he said, "Who created this storyboard and this plan?" I said, "That's the 5S program for the entire site, that I'm the one leading it."
Hello and welcome to another episode of Seller Talks, where we bring inspiring conversations with industry leaders who are driving innovation, shaping ecosystem, and creating meaningful impact. I'm your host Deepak Bajaj, and today we have accomplished global business leader joining us, Seyi Edward, managing partner at Princeton and Hills Consulting, a seasoned expert in commercial strategy and supply chain optimization with deep experience in the consumer good industry. With a strong foundation in operations, management, strategic sourcing, and warehousing operations, he has spent years helping organizations unlock efficiency, streamline supply chains, and drive sustainable commercial growth, which is very important for any company to scale and grow. His works sit at the intersection of strategy, execution, and continuous improvement, enabling companies to transform complex operational challenges into a scalable business outcome. Throughout his career, he has worked closely with businesses to optimize supply networks, procurement strategies, and build resilient operational framework that delivers both cost efficiency and long-term competitive advantage. Academically, grounded with an MBA in marketing from Universities of Lagos, he combines strong business acumen with a deep understanding of technology-enabled operations, positioning him as a trusted advisor for companies who are navigating growth, transformation, and operational excellence. Today, as managing partner at Princeton and Hill Consulting, he works with organizations to reimagine supply chains, strengthen commercial strategies, and build agile systems that can thrive in an increasingly complex global marketplace. I'm excited to explore his journey, leadership philosophy, and insights on the future of commercial strategies and supply chain transformation. Welcome, Say, at Value Seller Talks.
Hi, Deepak. Thanks a lot. Wow, mouthful. You've got a very long profile. Thanks for the introduction. It's fantastic. And it's been long coming. Thanks for also inviting me to your podcast. It's a pleasure being with you.
Thank you, and thanks for accepting our invitation. And take my words, I have still cut short your profile, and your achievements are so immense and so enrooted that it will take 30 minutes to just tell you what you have done so far. But yes, uh,
Absolutely.
so first of all, thank you for bringing all these information into the actionable framework, which is required by the industry. While I was here reading your portfolio, I really find that these are the real gaps. But our discussion will revolve around all these points. But before we move and talk about your professional titles and achievement, I really want to know who is Sayi Edward as a person, as a human being.
Personally, okay, I mean, I live very privately, but I'm married, okay, for a lovely wife, very lovely wife that's been very, very supportive. I've got two boys, boys' father, and then I love sports and traveling. And I think I've traveled across most of the continents in the world because of work and for pleasure. And I support one of the best clubs when it comes to football. I love football, and that's the number one sport that I actually just follow. Football all my life, family, siblings, and all that. We love football in my family. And I support Arsenal. I mean, that's one controversial club nowadays, but long suffering, 22 years we've not won the EPL, but we just love the club. Everything about it, the fiber of the club just runs through us. Christian, love God. And that's it. The pack. Well, it's a pleasure again. Simple life. And one of the things that I've done lately, well, not lately, past for some years now, very intentional with my name, and I've zeroed it down to just three names. Seyi, Anthony. I mean, the real meaning of Anthony is priceless. And then my
Mhm.
surname is Edward, which is guardian of wealth. So very, 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 very particular about my names, and all my children. They are very particular about their names as well. Right,
Mm.
that's me in simple terms. Love football, living in a country where football is almost like a religion. Oh, absolutely. And I'm living in a den where you've got my rivals. They're all around me. I won't mention their names, but let's leave it at that.
I agree, and you rightly mentioned the football is a religion, and then everyone followed very religiously. So every, inside the body, every portion of your body is, dedicated for the football.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. You love cricket, or
Yeah,
which other sports do you like? Definitely cricket number one, huh?
cricket is again, if you talk from an Indian perspective, yeah, cricket is a religion. So, we this T20 we have seen now. It's time for IPL, which is again a crazy thing happening.
Yeah,
So, I don't know what is going on, but cricketers are getting wealthier after every tournament. So, yeah, it's more over like a
that's the nature of
entertainment.
sports. It's
Yeah.
growing every year, year on year.
But exactly. So
Right.
it's all about, every continent has their own passion and on love for that particular sport. But yes, that's a good part, that's keep the person binding.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true. Excellent. Great. I
So
mean, that's me in a nutshell. A very simple life, like simplicity rather. And that's what has actually helped me also in supply chain.
yeah.
Once your supply chain is complex, we'll get to that.
But
Probably some of
simple.
your questions, maybe some of your questions will delve on complexity, but we'll get to know.
Yeah, exactly. And the simple,
Right.
take my word, simple people are more adventurous. Take my
Yeah,
word.
we love it that way. I mean, they always say when you're simple, it's just like the mobile phone. I look at it from the mobile phone perspective. The very moment Apple came into the market,
Mm,
that aspect that you don't know how complex the background is, but
mm.
you could swipe and just do so many things with the phone, and it's evolved after that.
Great.
So
Yeah.
that's where we are. All right.
Yeah. So, how you stepped into this commercial strategy, supply chain within this consumer good industry? Look, all these three names which I'm talking, commercial strategy, complicated, supply chain, hectic, and consumer good industry, dynamic. How you actually entered into this world of adventure?
Okay, I mean, I mean, from my profile, you could see that I actually did. So my first degree was in chemical engineering, so that sets the scene. Background is in engineering, but chemical engineering, was my focus, and then afterwards, I joined a chemical company at
Mhm.
an early stage, where I was in the research and development lab. So that sets the scene of that technical phase of my career. Did that for a year. And I joined a company called Cousins, PZ Cousins. They're based, it's a multinational company. Um, and that set the scene of coming in there as a process engineer and walking through that technical phase of um, managing plants, walking through shifts and all that. Basically technical, very technical at that level. And the company was so magnanimous. They had a very good graduate training program for
Mhm.
us then. I think we were about five or so. Two of us joined as chemical engineers, and there were other guys from the other engineering firm, I mean engineering units that also came into the company at that point. So both of us chemical engineers, we were moved around the factories as at then. It was a very robust training program, to be quite honest with you. Graduate training programs for just two chemical engineers coming in. They were the prospects, the way they programmed it, we were the prospect to actually manage the production arm of the business as at then. So you had the big manufacturing plant in the West African country where you produce the home care section, and then you also have the personal care section. So you actually will go through all that, and then eventually they put you in a unit where you now start growing your career. So technically you're well grounded. You've gone through the lab, quality and control. You've gone through safety, you've gone through engineering, you've gone through production, packaging, everything at that technical phase. And then you now have a shift that you're managing. That's when it comes the at that point you say now you're in the water. You either swim or you sink. After going through, but because of the nature of the program and the structure therein, every phase you go through, they ensure that there is a feedback funnel to it. So you're presenting back to the head of the unit or the head of the function as a then or the general manager, and they are ensuring that you're growing, you're learning, and you're having that required resilience that is needed for managing people and shift. So that's the foundation for me. Aside working in the chemical industry that I started with and joining this multinational company, I had that foundation that was built on technical basis. And then as you grow, the opportunity came where I moved from the factory perspective of supply chain, which is operations driven, to now the planning perspective, where I was now exposed to materials planning, supply chain planning. And now you know how the factory works. You're
Mhm.
now the one that is scheduling and looking at materials on how resource should actually be planned and how they should schedule their manufacturing to be able to meet a particular demand or a category that you're actually planning for. So like I said, there were three phases for me that I've grown. So the technical phase is what I've just described. The second phase that I came into being was about people management, which is middle management. People call it middle people management, but I see it as that stage in which you're actually managing people. You're managing projects. The company now trusts you enough to say, go, there's a transformational project that is about to kick off, and we have appointed you as the project manager. So you now start having that cross-functional leadership that leads you and helps you as a middle manager. And I took a lot of opportunities in that way. And I would say it was fantastic actually leading a lot of projects at that stage because you now start managing even colleagues and people that are even more senior to you. So you learn so many tricks that has to do with stakeholder management, team management, and how you actually should get things done in a stepwise and a scheduled manner. And then eventually general management. You have to just learn that. You've done technical people. Now, how are you going to manage around the resource?
Mhm.
Decision making, because at that point it's all about decision making. What do we need to do? How do we manage risk? How do we bring things together to actually ensure that the true north we're not losing track to where the true north is or the strategic direction. So it's more about strategy at that stage when you become a general manager. That's the area where you now start managing resource, general management, strategy, most especially. But the core of it is decision.
Mm.
And that's where if you've not gone through all that phases, especially when you have project management and you need to take decisions and you have to be very deliberate on the decisions that you're making, all those things are build up to what helps you when you become a general manager and the managing director of a company or direct or supply chain director of a company. So you have those three layers, but the top layer is now more of strategy, decision making, resource management, risk taking. Sometimes you just have to just be on the fly and taking decisions.
Yeah, that's make the baseline, right? That's the reason you have been transformed from a technical to the person who is supporting others to get their goals achieved. But let me ask you one small question. Now, I'm meeting with a lot of technical people, right? And they are very happy in, doing their technical job. They don't want to change. So how for you to move to these profile, it was a compulsion or it was just you want
Interesting.
to.
So I'll tell you, time and chances actually comes your way. And so that's why when I'm mentoring those that are junior to me, I tell them, run towards where you have challenges. So the way I moved from operations to planning, which is at the head office, was quite interesting. So I was leading the 5S program, which is the 5S program that you use in an operation unit to help them in making and optimizing your units and your factory. We I was leading the program for the a particular plant, and in my factory, I'd created this program and printed it out, put it in like a storyboard. And so I remember one of the head of HR then was brought in as an expert, transformational leader to actually. So he was going through my factory, and he bumped into my office. He never knew where my office was because all I used to do in those years was to go to the head office to meet with him if he had one-on-one discussion. So he came to my factory that particular day, and he was just walking around. And so he saw the storyboard and the end-to-end plan. And that was it. He walked into my office and he said, "Who created this storyboard and this plan?" I said, "That's the 5S program for the entire site, that I'm the one leading it." And he said, "Wow. And you created it yourself?" "Yeah, I used Excel and some other models to actually bring it, piece it together." It was like a storyboard and a mind mapping, just processes and all of that. And so he said, "Interesting. Can I snap a picture of it?" And this was way back then in my early days. I said, "Yeah, yeah, 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 yeah." But I said, "There's no need. I'll send you the soft copy and you could actually look at it." So he took this. So I sent him an email immediately after the meeting, and he went back to the head office. And I didn't know what was. It was an imprint on him at that point in time. So some days after, there was a planning role, a supply chain planning role that opened up at the head office. And they wanted to go externally to actually go recruit someone. So he said, you guys ain't going nowhere. I was at the plant and I met this young man over there in the factory. And he created a storyboard. And if you could plan that way, then he just needs to come in and learn the ropes. Maybe we're sending him a particular training for supply chain planning, materials planning, understanding purchasing and procurement. And he probably will be able to piece it together in a very short while and then take on that role. That was it, Deepak. That was it. The guy took the decision right there and there in the board meeting. And
Wow.
1 month after, I was already at the head office working as a supply chain. I moved from operations straight to supply chain. I was doing my MBA then, and it was surreal for me then. I found myself in the head office, and that was it. At
Wow.
that point, I think what took me there was the fact that I took on that challenge to be the organizer of the 5 years program at that point in time for the entire site. And I'm talking of four major plants, four major factories in a big manufacturing site. And it was a big challenge. So that's why that mantra came. I run towards challenges. I don't hide from them. I run towards. And once a project is about to happen and they are teasing me with the project, I want to just see what's in it. What's the project? How big is the project? And is there an opportunity to be the one that will lead it? But again, that's the scene. That's what sets the scene. Now, after that, I've actually looked at many opportunities, worked globally, managing 13 countries, and then at a point they wanted me to go into commercial, so they moved me first, gave me a soft landing into new product development. So that was my first foray into working with marketing in developing new products for the entire African region. From there, I moved into customer operations, sales operations planning, and demand planning. And that was it. Stayed in commercial for a while and then be the major interface with supply chain because of my background. So demand planning was now the pivotal unit that sits between commercial and supply chain and operations. Just be the anchor person. So give me that 360 degree where I've gone through, worked closely with marketing, being sales in the heart of sales, and also started with that technical base that I had. All that just pieced everything together. So when you're talking about route to market, we designed that route to market. I was part of the team that was looking at that, regularly working with the sales team, going to the field to see how sales happen and all that. It's very interesting. I remember one of the directors mentioned something that really interests me then. He said the growth of every organization is the footprint of the commercial, which is in this case the sales team and the marketing team, in the marketplace. And so for me, every other time you go into the market, you learn something new. So when someone comes up to me as a sales guy and says, what certification do I need to get? Guy, there is nothing like that. Your footprint of certification is right there in the marketplace. You know, whether either in the modern trade or in the traditional trade, especially when you're looking at it from the regions that you're working in. If you're in Europe, where I am, you have to keep going into the marketplace. You have to go into trade. You have to go into modern trade. In Africa, you have to be in the main market. In
Yeah.
Asia, is the same thing too. You have to be in the main market. If you sit behind your computer and you're crafting so many programs in for the Asian market or the African market, my
Mm.
friend,
No, 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 no.
your
So,
competition will smoke you.
yeah. So there are few points which I have taken note out of it. First of all, is most people have some challenge in a mindset, right? That this is not my job. But when you made a 5 year plan, maybe at that time it was not maybe expected, but yes, with a couple of steps extra which you have taken has immediately bring it in the limelight. And definitely that's a very important message because today if I talk with any Gen Z person, they say, okay, my job is from A to B, I will be doing that thing. So
Yeah,
accountability is there for their task, but from a holistic point of view, that is very much missing. So thank you, Sei, for bringing that particular up. And the second thing which I love, and I think because coming from a sales background, I agree with you that more and more you talk with the customer in the marketplace, and more you just with each and every rejection, still you are going and talking with the customers. I'm pretty much sure you get your more and more refinement and more ideas to make your product refine. And that's where
exactly.
everything comes, product refinement, product market need, demand analysis, need analysis. The list is so long.
It's so long. It's so long. I mean, the more you go and visit your clients, for instance, now, I mean, the dynamics has changed for me. My marketplace now is with my clients. The more you go to their factory or to their operating unit and all that, the more you see different things. different areas that you actually could optimize in helping the business. I mean, one particular experience that we had was we've done the transformation and it was going well. And so they got to a point that they it was fantastic. They could see long-term planning and all that. And I remember the MD came up to me and he said, "Listen, there's that short-term view that we need to have, and we need to have that level of granularity where we're spending time. Okay, we've decided this is the direction. How do we ensure that we have that nitty-gritty?"
Mm.
That only came by having that discussion. I said, what you need is the control tower. And so we redesigned it and said you will have a 3 months horizon where you have very detailed look into your control tower while you still have your strategic long-term integrated business planning process. But those two things will fuse together and they keep feeding into each other. And he absolutely fell in love with it. Absolutely. Because you could have your short-term focus and still your long-term focus and everything fits into each other. Well, I mean, just by visiting your client.
Exactly. That's true. That's true. And definitely today in the competitive world where no one will take decision immediately, they still take their own gestation period, own the period where the people and the customer will take you in the POC stage or negotiation stage or discussion stage. Every day scope of work gets changed. You remember how the real market works. But this type of more engagement we have, the better the visibility we have. At least we understand are we a good fit for them or they are the good fit for us. That is also one important point. So
Correct.
thank you for bringing. And I love the word control tower.
Yeah, control tower. I mean, we always have. Look, as consultants, we create so many things. Well, it's called control tower. The way it's designed, it gives you that focus. Just like you have a control tower when the plane is coming in and they're looking at all the planes that are coming in and you're able to just make decisions based on that. Yeah. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, but consumer industry again, it's a very very challenging and dynamic industry there because consumers change their interests every time, and it's a very short term. So first of all, from a operations or from a supply chain or from a commercial perspective, what are the
Mm.
biggest gap you have observed as you're consulting with a lot of organizations? So what gaps you have discovered?
Well, one of the things that always interests me when we go into an organization and they ask us, for instance, myself and my partner, so and they say, look, we have a problem with our order to cash process. Let me use that as an example. So your O2C process, we're having there's no material or the logistics is taking time. We see a long tail of KPIs that the business is trying to measure in terms of their performance. And it's quite interesting. We say, so which one of these KPIs is quite important that if you achieve them, it takes you every day to achieving your goal. Ah, so it's very difficult to now narrow it down to that perspective. So that's one area. The other area that we see is the level of complexity that companies carry. One area that you look at is let's take for instance an example, product.
Mhm.
The more a manufacturing company exists, the longer they exist, the more they have a long tail of product
Mm.
every day. And it's quite difficult to actually stop an SKU and say, look, this SKU has reached its product life cycle, and that's the end of the tail. We need to bring it to the end of his road and get it off our product architecture. Very, very difficult for most companies to do that. And it's just a simple model to just say, what's your portfolio management strategy or structure? How do you look at your products? So which ones are your bread and butter? Which ones are sitting as white elephants, or which ones have come to the tail end based on the product life cycle. And then you also see that aspect of they always say we have a fantastic team
Mm.
building activities and all that across organizations. And then you sit with function by function, and then you discover that this function has a set of KPIs. Commercial now, commercial is looking at our revenue, they're looking at their margin, gross margin percentage. They're looking at the number of NPDs that they are deploying every month or every year. For instance, an organization is saying, we're going to do 30 NPDs. Remember, I said the longer a company
Mm.
becomes successful, the more products they start introducing, and they don't kill off those products that have reached their tail end of just going out of existence. And so they keep carrying that portfolio. By the time you're joining and you're coming in as a consultant, you see a small organization or a fairly big organization, and they're carrying about 500 SKUs. And you're wondering, how are you managing this level of complexity? And so
Uh,
if if I'm a sales guy and I go into the market to sell, how will I be able to sell 100 SKUs to a particular customer? Just break that down to me. Either you have a whole lot of sales team selling different categories to the same customer or the same dealer in the
yeah.
market, and everybody is struggling for the same resource that that dealer has. So you have that long tail of product. You also have one other thing that amazes me also is the silo in which we create in organizations, and it always starts from leadership, where depending on how the leadership team are. And some organizations have tried to solve that problem by creating a matrix and all that. It has never, ever stopped, solve the problem. What solves the problem is bringing the team together through the DNA in which you run your business. And so those are the things that we look out for. How do you manage your business? And how does it bring that cross-functional team together regularly to discuss and to take decisions? So we
Mm.
try to look at it from that perspective. The front end, we spend so much time with the interview, working, getting information, looking through the transcripts before we start looking at data and maturity profile and all that, which probably you will get to that later on. But KPI is so long. There's a long tail of KPIs that these companies are looking at, and you're asking. Remember when there was that mantra then, and everyone was chasing through balance scorecard. Remember the time of balance scorecard? Some companies still maintain that the balance scorecard of some companies are like 2 pages, and you're wondering, sorry, how does this help the business in being profitable over a long haul? Uh,
Uh,
like I said, and then what's your product architecture and how do you do your portfolio management, your ABC classification, your Boston matrix? How do you bring all that together when it comes to the CBG, the consumer packaged goods industry, or the FMCG, depending on which one we're looking at. And then that long tail of products. When you're bringing in a new product, how do you ensure that the ones that are actually reach the tail end of their product life cycle, you're knocking them off and you're actually delisting them? Then there is that aspect of what's your time to market in the way you manage your new products. That is very, very critical. Some companies don't have that structure that they've created, where they can iteratively tell
mm.
you for this different complexity of new product introduction or development, we can get to the market in 9 months, in 12 months, in 2 years, depending on the complexity of that, if a blue ocean innovation that you're going for. So you must have that structure in place that will help you over a period. And so those are the things that just it comes to life. The very
Mm.
moment you start discussing, and then you have that infighting between commercial
Uh,
supply chain, and you're asking, sorry, where is competition? Within the organization or out there?
yeah, important.
And there
So,
has to be that clarity that, listen, we're here to run a business and to be very collaborative within the function. And how do we ensure that there is that consistency, nimbleness within supply chain? Don't create a very complex structure that will take a big wheel for you to turn around. Just like you have these big ships, they can't go like a speedboat in the ocean. They have to you keep turning the wheels before they can actually go through a big circumference. But those are the things that we see. We see that and we spot that through when we're interviewing uh, each of those units, the functions, and then we bring them together and we look at some scenario planning. And myself and my partner, we tend to see so many things. The way our business is structured, and I think is one area that has actually worked for us.
Impressive. First of all, it shows how the complexity when the organization grows. But I have a one simple question that why the company takes so much time to, you know, end the product, right? But as you rightly mentioned, tail end, right? Is any emotional attachment is there, or they are into the myth that okay, this product we started, it worked at that time, but now it become their core product, or their brand sort of thing, and that's the reason they don't want to either invest or don't want to continue.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, you get to hear so many things like if you don't innovate, you will die. Lots of company has have so many mantras, also so many short liners, and this is what I've seen. I've managed the PLM process, which is the product lifecycle management process, and one of the key things that you see is the product architecture of a company. It's
Mhm.
a little bit difficult for you to just come in as an organization or consultant and say, okay, all the C class, when you've done your analysis, all the C class should be delisted. It never works that way. It never
Mhm.
works that way. But however, there are circumstances that might come to being that could help an organization to take that decision. For instance, if a country is going through a major difficult period and you need to reinvent your entire product, you come to that point where your portfolio needs to look at everything that can give you that 80/20 rule. So, what percentage of the total portfolio will give me between 80 to 90% of my total revenue? And every other thing has to go at that point in time when there is a recession, core recession in your country. So that can make you take some very hard decision. And you discover that once you streamline into that portfolio that you've actually analyzed and it's giving you about 90% of your total, your A and B, it's giving you 90 to 95%. It eventually grows into the 100 when you kick off the C's. But if there is no recession and there is a normal thing, you will see that organizations that plot that product life cycle planning will know whether a product has actually reached the point where you keep rebranding it to ensure that the cycle grows again. It comes to that plateau, you rebrand, it starts growing again. So there are curves like that. But if it's coming and it's declining, you have to just look at your product architecture for that category. And those ones, you need to just delist them. You will see either they are contributing negatively to your margin, and you just have to just have that courage and discipline to at top management. That's why, remember when we started, I said one of the difficult things when you become a director, the executive director, is decision. And
Mhm.
if you've built yourself over time, when it comes to product, the listing, you have to come to that. So, when you categorize them into your ABC, you could use that model. You could use the Boston matrix to know which ones are in the fourth quadrant where you want them to be in terms of margin and net sales. You could also do one more thing and look at your architecture. Now, if I
Mm,
pull out from this architecture, what does it mean to the entire business profitability?
yeah.
Category by category, you looked at the product architecture and you say, okay, these tail end ones, if we pull out, is there competition? Will it create a room for competition to come in and take that space? And will they be able to grow that SKU and take up a space that will hurt you in future? If not, get rid of it.
Mm,
And
yeah.
you become very profitable. The very moment you become manageable in terms of your portfolio, you start becoming very profitable in the way the business runs.
So we call it in the designing and planning stage, what if scenarios. So there are so many moving parts into this, where if you move out, then someone will
Will
take
they
that
come in
position.
and take that
Or
space?
yeah, and actually that's the one of the fear factor that people don't want to discontinue with their products, right? Although
Yeah,
maybe the demand is not there, but still they just want to continue. Okay, okay, that's make their that name become the brand, right?
it
So,
becomes a brand. I mean, I'll give you a classic example. In the sachet industry, many years back, um, there was so in the detergent, you once the sachets were at a very low help, where you now had a detergent that you're selling 10 grams, you've reduced it from 20 grams to 15 grams, and then you're going to 10 grams. And you're asking, you must get to the point where you're asking yourself, how low can you go in terms of grammage?
mm,
It definitely can go to 5 grams. And at 10 grams of detergent in a sachet, you're not profitable for that SKU. It's just filling up a space. And right now, for this particular country that I'm talking of now in West Africa, the 10 grams is no longer existing. There's no way you can be profitable selling 10 grams sachet of detergent out there. Okay, you have to just evolve into 200 grams and gradually shifted the consumer mindset into 200 grams, 500 grams, 1000 grams. And it has to be a gradual shift for you to be able to evolve, or you shift them to 100 grams and gradually you start delisting the smaller sachets because what you're selling will be packaging at that point. You're not selling the detergent, you're just selling the packaging, which is more expensive than than
then
the whole
everything.
detergent in itself. So, but sometimes, like I said, conditions or conflicts could actually lead recession in a country could actually lead you to making that bold decision, and you just have to cut that long tail. The other thing that I didn't mention was that there are some industries that also do one thing. They complicate their level of number of products that they have. For instance, special products that they've created for some certain customers. So a customer comes in, they are one-off customers, but let's say you produce a particular size of, let's say, mattress, and because of that
Mm,
particular customer, you've actually now cut your mattress differently. Maybe they want it circular. You've now created a circular mattress for that particular customer, and that becomes an SKU in your system. Absolutely. And so some of that customer will come after 5 months or 6 months and say, "Oh, that circular mattress that you sold, I hear you could actually do something like that for me." And you keep doing that, but I don't want 100 diameters, I want 200 diameters.
uh,
You understand? And
yeah.
instances of that nature also happens where you're now very specific and your solution is driven towards 2 or 3 customers. You must come
Mm.
to that point to say, is this sustainable over a long haul? If it's not, then you have to
Time to switch off, or look for some.
special. We call them in some industries they call them special SKUs, and you need to just delist those ones. You need to, otherwise they're just complexities that you're carrying in your business.
No, I totally understand because the sachet example is very, very common, I must say, because at one time we were getting a small sachets, but now we can't find it in any store, any retail market. We can't find it. And by the way, that was something which was most popular because
Yes, that's why I
because
said it depends on the time and the factors that are driving that. if you know it's no longer profitable, you start shifting the mind, and it's a gradual shift. You start ensuring that there is scarcity of those smaller ones. Once you've done your research, the competition cannot just slide in and take over that space,
Hmm.
because you know the industry is shifting towards that. And so gradually you start phasing them out, and then you move the mind of the consumer to just looking at the bigger sachet, which is, or the next stage of your sachet, which is maybe 50 grams or 100 grams, depending on how your industry is built.
And one more point on this particular topic is, is this that the brand becomes so popular that even if the competitor wants to compete, even they have removed that particular SKUs that stocks, still the consumer want to, buy from that brand only. So that's where the
Yes.
brand building and because whatever they will sell, whether maybe I'm overpaying to get some extra stuff, even it is not required. Or maybe I want to use it once time, but still it is not required for me to spend extra, but still I pay because that level of comfort, trust, and the recognition, right? The
Yeah.
satisfaction that come from that particular product of that particular brand. I,
Exactly. I mean, it's brand equity, and
I
there's that inverted pyramid where you know you've converted your first timers to actually loyal customers, and that repeat buy is there. So once you know your brand equity is quite strong, you actually could play around with so many things, and you could be the one driving the movement from particular size to another size.
All right. I know this topic is going, on and
Yeah,
on.
it's
It's because now when it comes to the product which we are using day in, day out, and it's in regular routine, then it gives the mathematics and the equations behind it, which you are expert and you are doing. It really creates a lot of movement, I must say. Rather than the impact, I said it's a movement because you are driving the consumer behavior according to that.
absolutely. There are times that you just have to be the one that will shift the consumer's mind into saying, look, this is more benefit in terms of grammage and how you actually position the product. So if you're able to demonstrate that the grammage in this bigger size gives you more numerical wash, number of wash that you could get from it is more than the small sachet that you're buying, then you're moving them away gradually into embracing the new SKU size that you've created.
Right, no, perfect, perfect. And thanks for bringing all these examples. That relates, what we are doing and why we are doing. And this is some mind like yours who is actually pushing us to behave in that manner. So,
Relatable.
that,
Yeah,
uh, uh, although you have answered a lot many pointers here, and but I really want to understand, or I want you to introduce the Princeton and Hill Consulting firm. What exactly is that, and why you built that firm?
okay. Princeton and Hills started in 2009. Two young minds, myself and my business partner. My business partner is Bolu. First name is Bolu. You've also met him. So we thought of setting up a company that we could actually consult.
Hmm.
Um, I have a technical background, okay? So 2009, very technical, still a middle manager then, middle level manager. Technical supply chain operations background. He has technology background, and then he has moved completely into leadership, human capital development. But he's got those two things working for him. And we said there's a fusion that is out there that is not unique to most consulting companies, which is when we get a job or a transformation project that the company wants us to come in to do. And most consulting firms drive it from the supply chain perspective alone, and then they create a change management project. We have a fusion tech model that we've created, the fusion of leadership, human capital development, fusing with operations at the same time. And that's what gives us that uniqueness. So, for instance, if we're doing a transformational project and we are going through the diagnostics phase, it's at that point that we are actually going through so many layers that we've created. And so Princeton and Hills, we're able to now say this is our model in terms of the early part where we are looking at your business diagnostics or assessment, and we are teasing out operational issue and people issue, and we're able to now fuse it together into one single program that is very, very expansive. So at the end, it might mean that we'll identify functions and individual core areas where we could put them on executive coaching, for example, or we could sit in a transformatory project, which my partner is very good at, and is seeing that these guys are working as silos, and there's that team bonding that needs to be looked at holistically, or that they don't have that resilience to actually manage conflict.
Mm.
So people shy away in industries, they shy away from conflict. They don't want conflict to actually arise. But it's in that conflict that you're able to actually discuss things and come to a consensus. We always say consensus and alignment. Agreement is interesting, but you have to be aligned and you have to leave that meeting room all with one consensus. And so we create that holistic program that layers everything. So as we're going through the change management project, we already are very clear in our mind what human capital development programs that we need to put in place. Executive coaching, if it's for senior executive C-suite members that we need to coach all through the program to ensure that this is how you evolve. This, even if you make a mistake during the early part in which we've deployed, yes, you are developing, and this is your learning curve that we created for you. And
Mm.
so we have that human capital development aspect, and we have the operations, and we're deploying it side by side so that everything is actually working the way we want it to work, especially with the soft skill and the technical skill being fused together to ensure that our end goal is to ensure that there is sustainability at the end of it all. And then we have that five-step sustainability project that we've process that we've put in place. So Princeton and Hills is a company that helps business to optimize their processes and ensuring that we look at it from the technical perspective and the human capital perspective and create a holistic program when developed, when deployed, will ensure that the business is growing sustainably over a long haul. Now, when there is that requirement of technology, both of us from our technical backgrounds are able to now say, for you to now be able to do this is the technology that could actually help you as an enabler to get that done. And if you already have an ERP a system or in your company, it's now how do we ensure we optimize the use of that system, and how does it ensure that long term it keeps sustaining the business model that we've put in place.
Mm. Yeah. Uh, the five-step holistic program, you have mentioned it multiple times. What exactly
Yeah.
is
Well, without divulging what we
that?
do, this is what it is. So the first stage for us is business diagnostics. Okay, business diagnostics. We go through three layers of business diagnostics. First is the interview. Second is a maturity profile that we've created, and then the third is because we've signed an NDA with the company. We
Mhm.
look at their data and we're able to fuse it together to tell them this is what we believe is the plan going forward in terms of development and deployment, and then how long the program will take us to deploy based on the complexity or the simplicity of the project. Once we've done that, we now have a five-step process that we've put in place. So it starts with a workshop, the intensity of the workshop, the specialized workshop, the target operating model, the deployment phase, and then finally the sustainability model. So we've
Mm.
designed that it works for us. It has tweaks by industry. So we don't just box every industry into that. We could come into your industry and we say, okay, it will be a compressed five-step process, because what structure does for you is that it makes you be able to actually iterate your success repeatedly at every point in time. Once you have a structured way in which you actually deploy your program within any company. So we've got that. It's been working for us. We have it in different layers, and we could always deploy it at the snap of our hands and just say, this is how we're gonna just progress with it. And remember, everything is still infusing the soft skill is all within that deployment. Everything is in there.
Uh, it looks very positive, lot of discussion. Once the decision maker talk with you, speak with you, definitely they will understand. But when it comes to the real sales, when you approach someone, who doesn't know, who has a decent idea about you, but maybe not, they are talking about the transformation, but they actually are fearful at the back of the mind. Maybe something evolve during the evolution, something will be cut off, or there will be again a cost of implementing such programs, right? So how you handle that rejection and that uh, no saying attitude of the client?
Is this in perspective of you saying that some will be so skeptical about what you're about to deploy?
Yeah.
Is that the question?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
excellent. And it's a very good question that you've just asked now, where at that point, one of the key things that we work with is we spend, remember, like that's why I said we spend quite a lot of time at the early part, the front end of the process. And it takes us to what we call the target operating model when we start off the five-step
Hmm.
process. Your ability to demonstrate what we call the iterative. So you have an integrated test cycle that we go through. A lot of companies few companies do that. Let me rephrase that. That integrated test cycle is where you actually demonstrate your target operating model, and that gives that confidence. And there are other layers that we go through, which is identifying stakeholder management and knowing the level of influence versus the support we require from them or the interest, depending on the level of complexity of that project. Stakeholder management comes to our mind. We go through the industry while we're going through the interview. You could see the reason why we go through that interview phase. And we spend quite a lot of time at the interview phase to know the real influencers when it comes to stakeholder management who could buy into the project, and you're able to demonstrate the benefits of that process or the change to them towards their career and how they will learn and their contribution to the eventual success of the entire program. And so back to that, you now look at your target operating model and you
Hmm.
must have the ability to create a structure that gives you an integrated test cycle, how you could demonstrate from beginning to end the outcome that you're expecting. So
Hmm.
we always have that integrated test cycle so that from commercial, if for instance we're looking at the order to cash from the point of raising an order, delivery, invoicing, and getting your cash, we will do a test, end-to-end test, which we call the integrated test cycle. And through that, we're able to now tease out those interfaces and ensure that we demonstrate to the business that this could actually work. And it will, for instance, maybe shrink your lead time of delivery or whatever we're trying to solve for them.
Uh, uh, so basically, it's all about your intelligence with the proper hand holding with the relevant stakeholders, and also the complexity arises when it comes to the cross functionalities, as well as the people below that hierarchy. So yeah, everyone has to be aligned. So I'm pretty much sure that keeps you very busy and tiring also. It's not an easy job to when it comes to
Yes, and
managing
that's why
humans.
I said I mean, the way we've designed our model, my business partner and his function are the soft skill guys who are actually coming together and saying, the other guy that we just interviewed is one of the big stakeholders that we need to work with closely. And then we go back into the meeting and say, where does it fall in this matrix, in the Boston matrix? Where does it sit? Oh, it sits in the in the high influence, high impact quadrant. That's our
Mm.
man. We need to spend more time with him. You just
That
have to
means
when it comes to any project, and so that you could drive some decisions as fast as possible as well.
true. As you're talking, and if you want to scale now, the tool like AI, the technology like AI should become your friend, right? So how Princeton is using AI and all new innovative technologies to make it scalable and make it more impactful.
Yeah, well, you just touched live wire, and I always tell people now. I had a business meeting we'll say some weeks back, and very senior consultants that I had lunch with, and we were discussing the impact AI is having in the consulting industry. And one of the things that, without divulging what we're developing now, and he said, this project that you're developing for Princeton and Hills that gives you this edge, is it AI driven? I said, absolutely. Absolutely. For every consulting company that is trying to actually edge and have that competitive edge, whatever you're doing now, and you're not looking at it structure wise on how AI is going to enhance it. For instance, the area of, excuse me, in the area of, let's say, for instance, let's start with the diagnostics. For instance, you must have a tool that you design that gives you the ability to come up with decisions as fast as possible. So you've gathered all the information together in terms of interview, you have your transcript, you've pieced this together, and then you have the data and these three areas and the maturity. With an AI tool, it brings everything together and tells you what the key issues are, what the possible solutions are, and then you marry it with what you've seen when you've actually gone to the industry in terms of your visit, either the service industry or the manufacturing industry or the what do you call it, the process industry that are manufacturing. And so with all that, you are faster
Mm,
in your proposal. Some things that used to take about 2 weeks, you could get that done immediately.
mm,
A client can click into your site and they see your maturity profile and they answer some questions and immediately it just throws out the feedback to them on key areas, and then immediately they could have a solution in terms of what they require and how what steps they need to take. I mean, you won't. There are other things that we need to when it comes to the commercial aspect of that one, which we will put this thing. But AI is an enablement. Um, some people are saying, oh, AI will not make us think any longer. It means that we are fully dependent on AI to do everything for us. I always take it back to how we started many years back. In mathematics, we used to use four-figure table. And then in, in the exam or while we were growing up, in my own days, it was four-figure table. And then we graduated into using the calculator. And then from the calculator, we could use the computers and all that, Excel, everything. That alone tells you how well technology has actually improved the way we actually do things and the speed in which we're able to actually get things done, programming, using the computer, the speed. Now, what AI will do for us also is the speed in which we get solutions deployed, the speed in which we make decisions known, in which we're able to analyze a whole lot of data and bring it together into one piece and be able to give a feedback to a client in a very short period to tell them that these are the findings, these are the possible solutions, this is what we believe, and these are the possible results that we expect in the next 4 months, 5 months, 6 months in that sequence. That is what AI is there for. You're not going to sit back as a consultant and not do anything, but it's going to make your project, your way of consulting and deploying much faster, more decision driven, more simplified in the way it actually helps you.
mm. And that's very rightly mentioned that AI is something which put an intelligence, but it will only put intelligence if you are creative.
If you
If
create it, exactly. And
yeah,
if you're feeding it, what you're feeding
yeah,
into
yeah,
it
yeah.
keeps learning.
Yeah. So obviously, there's always a negative sentiments around it, especially the layoff which is going on right
Yeah,
now. And but if you look at the thing that mostly the people who are just copy and pasting it, yeah, that is the one who is the mostly suffered. And
yeah,
and it doesn't mean that people who use how to use the tools of AI, it doesn't mean that they are safe. It's only about the people who are creative and think alike with the customers and give them more feedbacks. That's something which will rule the world. And AI is just
correct.
like an enabler for them for the getting the economics of scale. I'm pretty much sure your firm is also focusing on AI into the smart and
Yeah,
intelligent.
we have a solution that will hit the market very soon. Very, very much soon. It's in the development phase. We're working with you and the other guys to actually get this in the market. Absolutely gorgeous tool that we have that will change the landscape of consulting across the globe. We're very confident of once it's deployed.
Yeah. I'm wishing you best of luck for that, and I'm pretty much sure you are going to create a that phase which the consulting firms has not ever seen. They've just thought in their dreams. So best of luck for that. In the interest of time, I really want to touch upon that what will be your messages to the young leaders or young aspirants who want to start their career in supply chain or into the consumer good industry.
Hmm. If you're starting off, run towards challenges. Run towards challenges. Um, so it's quite interesting when you look at it from the perspective of the opportunities that comes across your way. Um, an example was let me I'm trying I want to bring it to life when it comes to using examples as well. But first thing I always tell a young man that is starting off his career is create what we call it's called the law of time perspective. The law of time perspective, which is the longer you are able to plan, the more successful you are. And so one of my junior colleagues or associates asked me then, said, so are you saying I should create a 5 year plan? I said, why are you looking 5 years? The law of time perspective is telling you the longer you're able to plan, the more probable you're able to actually grow or succeed into becoming that person. And so I challenged and I said, the minimum I believe you should create is a 50-year plan.
Oh, 50 years
I
plan.
said, whoa.
Oh,
I said, okay, look at it from this perspective. You're not sitting down and creating yearly plans for 50 years. You're taking it in chunks.
mm,
So, and the best way to look at it is create it in 5 year buckets. So
mm,
every 5 years, so we're in 2026. If you start off in 2026, you will have 5 year bracket, which will end in 2031. And then you have 2031 down to
20.
36, like that in those buckets. And what do you want there? So if a young man is starting off, he probably will say, okay, within this bracket, I want to probably work in an industry and learn this, this, three things.
Mm,
So if you look at it, and I say look at it from three things because there are interdependencies when you're creating that 50-year plan. What are the interdependencies? We are social people. Human beings are social.
mm,
So
mm,
you can't create plans in isolation. So look at it from career, your social life, which is family. At what point will you want to get married when you're looking at every 5 years bucket? Just put
mm.
click it there and say married. Just write it there within
Yeah.
the could be in the 10-year back bracket. And so once you look at it, in that bracket, you tend to now see that if you get married, for instance, if you're saying you're 20 years old and you're saying it will be in the second bracket, which is the first 5 years, the second 5 years, I will probably get married then. Don't forget, you get married at that point, you probably will have children. That starts
Mm,
changing the dynamics of how you've created that long-term plan. So you look at it from your health, your career, your finance, your spiritual life, and then finally retire. Like when we started off,
yeah.
what will it be in terms of how do I give back to the community or the society? That's the tail end. So once you're looking at each of those plans in those perspective, you're able to create within 5 year bracket a very, very high level plan. Now, within those years bracket, every year at the turn of the year, before the turn of the year, I mean by
Mm,
December, you're now creating the detailed plan around that.
mm,
So you've already have your 50-year plan, and then every year you now have detailed plan within that. If, for instance, you've said you're going to do your masters, when I created mine, the bracket in which the masters sat in was now, what do I require in the next 1 to 2 years time to do my MBA?
mm,
How much will it cost me? So that's where the detail comes in. So if I'm going to kick it off at this point, I need to write if there's an entry exam that is required, a GMAT or GRE, what entry, at what point will I take the exam? If I take the exam now, I apply for my admission, this, that, that's the detail within that. And that comes in every year. But you already have that 5 year bracket. And so whatever we've just discussed now is just 10 blocks of plans that you've put in a very hard copy book or your system, if you have a cloud that you could actually upload it. And then you could create it as a storyboard so you could actually look at it regularly and make reference to it. So, law of time perspective. Now, when it now comes to your career, first off, never shy away from a challenge.
mm,
Never shy away from a challenge. Where the problem is, that's where you run towards. That's where you learn. That's where why when I took up the challenge of the 5 years, I didn't know what it was going to lead to. But someone else saw the storyboard, saw the program that I've created, and he opened up another opportunity for me.
yeah.
And one example that also helped me very, very in the early stage of my life also was there was a unit, a washing up liquid unit that was sub-optimally producing in one of the manufacturing sites. And so I was deployed there. But when we got there, I saw the challenge and I went back to the unit head, the head of manufacturing then, and I said, boss, we'll need some capex investment. And he looked at me and he said, unfortunately, we are in the financial year. There is no capex. You have to go there and look at, you're a chemical engineer, isn't it? I said, yes,
Mm,
sir. They said, you go back there and you look through the line, and whatever you've learned in chemical engineering, this is the time for you to go back there and go get it done. So I went back to the plant and I sat down with the plant engineer then, and we did what we call work study. First off, manufacturing line. The sales for that product was growing at a very fast pace at that particular period, and the marketing and the sales team want to actually push that washing up liquid line category. And they said if we're able to double, so as at then they were making about 250 cartons a day, and they gave us a target of 500. So to double the line output, yeah, to double the line output, I have to get that done within this financial year. And so we started with our work study, and we discovered that the holding vessels were was just one. The manufacturer and the holding vessel was one. It's just
mm,
simply doing a work study and looking at the flow, and we saw
mm,
where the bottlenecks were. Okay, so in the manufacturing, there's a bottleneck. In the packaging, what's the bottleneck? We saw each of those key areas, and we started solving them one after the other. We got an old vessel in one of the sites that had been abandoned, brought it into the factory, mended it, made it look nice, stainless steel, and put it there. Holding vessel solved. Packaging solved. And then at the end of the project, in 6 months, we not only double, we quadruple.
Oh, lovely.
So we moved from 250 to 1,000 per day. And one of the other things that means will be that you didn't need double shift any longer or an extended shift. So the extended shift ended, the weekend work also ended. So everything compressed into a single shift and 5 days a week. So the cost in optimization from that line alone was what set the base. So next year, capex investment actually came into four. So imagine if I had run away from that challenge, I wouldn't have been able to actually see that the application of work study on a line will tell you where the bottlenecks are, and then you start solving them one after the other. You solve a problem, it throws up another challenge elsewhere.
Yeah.
You
Right.
solve that one, it throws it until you get to the end, where you now say, this is the end, me, and then you run it end to end, and it now gives you that. It was an absolute, I think it was the first challenge in my early days when I moved into that multinational company where we had that graduate training program, and it was absolutely absolutely satisfying to get that line resolved. I knew I had a fantastic review at the final at the end of the year. The entire team we had. I mean, challenge was to double. We improved output by 4 times the
Mm.
original target.
And basically leveraging what is already been there in the system, which has been abundant and which has not been taken care. So if you give a very powerful message, if you look inside, you will get all the answers.
You get on the answer, and then you think. I mean, we use that line a lot. Think outside the box. No, you go there,
And
sit inside the box, and then come out. I think I would change that about thinking outside the box. I will say, first of all, go into the factory and see the entire thing and do your work study, but take time out every time to come outside that factory and look at it from the outside perspective. And what we spoke about then was the best way to read the label of a bottle is when you take yourself outside that bottle.
mm,
Read the label of a bottle when you're inside it. So fine, it's good. You have to go there, do your work study, but every other time, take a step back, which we used to do, myself and the plant engineer. Okay, we've resolved this. We go outside and we're looking at the factory from outside and we're saying, okay, seems that is the next thing that we need to resolve. And we go there, we look for for a solution and we solve it bit by bit until we got to the end of the line. And that was it. Just moving the whole line.
impressive, impressive. I really love this word, the satisfying, because whatever you get in the form of appraisal, promotion, that's a secondary thing. But as you have a very peaceful sleep, during the execution also, as well as after the results, which has been there double than the targets, which is quadruple.
And
And
enjoy the journey.
exactly.
Enjoy the journey because I remember midway into the project. I mean, there's no, it's a podcast, but midway into the project, one of the things that happened was I took time out for 4 weeks. I went away for 4 weeks because, yeah, we got it. So we improved the line to 350. It got to 700, and then everything collapsed again back to 450. At that point, it was midway into the project. And I just told my line manager then, I said, you know what? I'm going on holiday. I need to go out of this environment and reinvigorate myself so that when I get back, I'll look at the line from a different perspective. I said, yeah, 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 So I went for it was one of the longest holiday I had gone through because we've put in so much. I went on holiday, and then the plant engineer. Once I was back, the plant engineer also went on holiday. By the time both of us got back, the energy to run to the end was massive, and that's why we got it to the end. And at that point, it became 3 times, and then 4 times, and that was it. And we just maintained it at that level.
And these small breaks are very much important because
Oh
that
yeah.
a different refreshment and good energy to come back and to look the same thing into from a different perspective.
And you know where I got the idea from that we actually implemented when I got back? Actually, it was my first visit to the States. It was my first visit to the United States. I went on holiday to the United States and went to this, and as I was traveling, I traveled, and God bless my auntie, fantastic woman. She said, so I was staying in New York there, and I said, Shay, get on the get on the Greyhound bus and come to California and meet me there. So I'd rather fly. He said, no, get on the Greyhound bus. You know America more than any other. Very few Americans do that. So I got on the Greyhound bus from New York. It's about 3 days by road. And while we were going, I saw a truck,
Mm.
and I saw the sequence of what was sitting on that truck. And immediately I had you remember those cameras that we had in those
Yeah,
Polaroid cameras that,
yeah.
that could play. So I immediately snapped
Like,
it, and I saw the sequence, and that was what we actually needed in the line. Go back to the country, and boom, I showed it to the plant engineer, and he said, "What?" I said, "I got this on holiday, and while we were going on this trip, I said, this is what we need on the line." He said, "Wow, never can tell that they could actually arrange something," and it was the way they actually arranged. The truck was lifting something across the country, it was going cross country, and we're just driving. We were riding beside it, and then I just caught the attention. I took out my Polaroid, and I went back, and we just used that sequence to actually improve the line. That was the last. That was the missing piece of the jigsaw. I got it
uh,
from just traveling on holiday.
yeah. Mm. Well, when you're not thinking about something, you get a lot of ideas.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes,
Yeah.
like I said, you could read the label of a bottle when you come out of the bottle, and just it could be on holiday. You just enjoy that journey while you're going through and building your career.
Impressive, and thanks for sharing that. It's a very informative, and I'm pretty sure the people who are listening to us, they will get these small snippets, and that will refresh their or maybe able to solve their problem while listening to our podcast. So thank you
Absolutely.
for the last question from my side, that if you were given a magic wand to transform the consulting and supply chain industry overnight, what is the one change would you like to implement
You're telling us you want
immediately?
us to be magicians or what now? Huh?
It is needed. Yeah. That's how the legacies are made, right?
Yeah. Listen, okay. I mean, we've had our consulting company now since 2009, so it's been a while now. We ran it on the side. Now we're fully driving things the last 3 to 4 years now. I'll tell you this, for every company that wants to go into consulting, or what's the landscape, how do we change the landscape? Spend a lot of time on two of those units, two areas. One is the front end. So, the front end, how do we ensure that we have a fantastic tool that will help you and give you that competitive edge in the front end? And then have a sustainability approach, which is how do you ensure that whatever you've deployed or transformed for any organization is sustainable over a long haul? And that's always the missing piece for every consult. It's very easy to go into an organization and consult, and then you're sitting in the background, and you're asking people, "Oh, this is what needs to be done." Your foot needs to be right there with the client, working closely to ensure that you are a partner for their success rather than just coming there, get everything you need to get from them, and then moving ahead. No, you are a partner when you're going into consulting. Spend a lot of time to change the industry. We as consultants needs to reinvent how we work with our clients. First thing, front end, and then we've got fantastic technology now, which is AI, that can help you in actually taking decisions generatively or predictively, depending on how you want to look at things. And how do you ensure that you create the soft skill that will ensure that that business sustains whatever transformation you've created for them on the long haul?
Mm.
We have to get to that point. A lot of companies just want to come in, do what they need to do, and move out. You are partner in the progress of that company. So when they are talking about their story, success story, you have a piece of that jigsaw there. Uh, for me, that's how I see consulting now. I've changed. It used to be, oh, in the early stage, oh, we just want to go there and give them one of the best solutions that we've created. Right now, we rather want to partner with you to be a success, and we want to see you grow as a company. And that's why we always create that early life support structure and then long-term structure where we are continuously stopping by and seeing that that sustainability is there. You have to just do that. And it's not about what you want to earn from that company. It's how you're improving your profile and the success story for those companies.
It's a very powerful message, the partner of success. And when you take that part, it means that accountability as well as the overall out of the box thinking or out of the scope, that is something which you are willing to go, and that's make the partner a one face or one, or we call it in our project management lines, one neck to choke, right? So,
Yeah.
so that's that, but that's give a very comfort feeling because that's how the relationship moved into the trust and trust moved into the advisor. I totally resonate with you because that is the biggest thing which is missing right now with most of the organization. But yes, that magic wand is not making you a customer for a short to midterm, but it's for the lifetime.
Lately, and you mentioned something now, and I was having a discussion also with one of our clients, and the C-suite member was looking at the function, and he wanted to deploy the process as fast as possible in that unit. And while we looked at it together, I mentioned something, and I pulled out. There's this model that I learned many years back. I learned it from a book that I read. It's called the STARS model. STARS model. So the S is startup, T is turnaround, A is accelerated growth, R is realignment, and S is sustainable growth or sustainable success, depending on how you're looking at it. And so I asked one pertinent question. I said, this particular function sits on which of these?
Hmm.
I said so. If you join an organization or you want to consult for an organization and they are in the turnaround phase and you're trying to do sustainable success, you're on the wrong track because you want to get in there. The boat is sinking. How do they stop that boat from sinking and stabilizing it? And then you start thinking of the next thing, which is
Hmm.
the growth. So every every organization, there is no silver bullet that you actually go through with that organization. There's no silver bullet. You go in there to know that you want to learn, do it. That's why I said spend time in that front end to learn, look through the structures layer by layer using whatever design or model you've created. For us, we have that three-step approach for the front end, and ensure that you spend that enough time in the interview phase, you will get a lot of information. Don't be in a hurry. Don't ever be in a hurry to want to deploy. Oh, we've got a five-step approach. Oh, yes, we've got a five-step approach, but we don't throw it in the face of our client as the first thing. We want to sit down and listen to them. That's it. Anyway, I thought I
Yeah.
should just throw that as well.
Uh, Agree. Don't be in hurry. That's important because when you are in hurry, you may miss some of the critical things. So be patient because at the end of the day, without proper listening, you will not reach to that level.
Correct.
So
Exactly.
yeah,
All right.
you're not here for a transaction. You're here for building a relation.
Relationship, partnership, long term. Always
Yeah.
have that long term goal in mind that we want to see that this company actually progresses and they're successful long term. Long term.
I'm sure that most of the professionals, especially the entrepreneurs, startup companies who are actually coming and emerging into the real world, and they are able to get some secure some projects, but they are nowadays in a very fast forward mode to execute it and move forward, right? This so guys, this is the strategy you must follow, and the learnings and the wisdom which you're getting from Mr. Seyi is priceless. So implement it, and then you will be able to scale your business like anything. So so thank you, Sai, for your truly insightful and inspiring conversation. I know there are so many thoughts which is coming in your mind because
Yeah. It's
it's
been
your experience.
interesting.
It's your experience. It's your because it's not the theoretical knowledge. You have actually make it happen. You live it. You live that particular feeling and that successful and the satisfaction which you have get out of that particular challenges which you have executed within your team is something which is really important. And I understand, at that time the resources were limited and the support system was also very limited. So that makes you who you are today. So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for all your information, all your guidance, the powerful messages which you have shared. And I'm pretty much sure this is going to create a lot of impact to the thousands of people who are listening to us.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you for the opportunity, Deepak. It's a pleasure. And it's been a
Bye.
fantastic podcast that we've just had. I mean, very, very interactive session that we've had.
Yeah, pleasure all us. Thank you so much for your time. And to the audience, until next time, this is Deepak Vijay signing off. Thank you.
See you very soon.